It was mentioned before that a very long time ago, some kind of force gave energy for the first particles in the universe and created a continuing energy turnover between them. These first particles were formed as the result of various kinds of radiation interaction with each other. So at first appeared the main kinds of rays. Then some kind of force charged them with energy, and they spread in the universe in various directions. Every specific radiation goes in different ways. For example, in straight lines or in various kind of waves and etc. These rays didn't spread separately, but mixed together. When different kinds of rays collided with each other, they split up into many smaller ray clusters that didn't change their nature. The splitting process depends on the size of these clusters. The larger clusters would break down the smaller clusters of different kind of rays into many even smaller clusters. Meanwhile, the effect of these smaller clusters to the larger ones after the collision would be insignificant. When the same kind of rays collide, they connect with each other and make a larger ray cluster. This cluster starts moving to a different direction than those rays before the collision. The direction of this new cluster mostly depends on the larger cluster's previous direction before the collision, because it has more energy than the smaller cluster because it is composed of a larger amount of rays. However, the smaller cluster has a little impact too, because it slightly slows down the movement of the larger cluster. So, for that reason, this new cluster moves almost at the same direction as the larger cluster before the collision with the slight deviation, which depends on the previous direction of the smaller cluster. If these colliding clusters are composed of the same amount of the same kind of rays, then the moving direction of the new cluster after collision is equally deviated from the moving directions of both colliding clusters before the collision. When entirely different kinds of rays collide, they don't connect, but break down each other into many smaller clusters with different movement directions than before. The largest changes in moving directions appear in smaller clusters. After the collision, the most damage is done to the smaller clusters. There are also many kinds of rays, which are more or less similar to each other. These rays react differently during the contact. When the clusters of these kinds of rays collide, they create rays compounds because one kind of ray has fuel in its structure to maintain energy of another kind of ray, and vice versa. For this reason, they attract each other. People named those rays compounds as subatomic particles, but they didn't know for sure if they were really the smallest particles in the universe. Maybe subatomic particles are composed of even smaller particles, but the most importantly, the smallest ones are the compounds of similar kind of rays.